There are many things about David and his character before the Lord that are inspiring. I think one of the most inspiring things about David is how he talks to God. And there's four key observations that I've learned, basically themes of how David speaks to God that we as Christians in the modern day can learn from. The first we talked about in a previous video, his transparency, the way that David brought everything and anything before the Lord. He talked openly as if he would to a bestest friend. He shared all of his fears, all of his concerns, all of his anxieties. The second, and I think one of the most significant things about David, is that he comes back to remind himself of God's truth, and through that is comforted personally by the Lord. How many times do we know something is true, and yet we let our irrational thoughts and emotions run the show and dictate our day and how we take away, how we make decisions, how we make choices because of the irrational feelings and thoughts that we experience? And it doesn't mean that those things are just non-existent. We still feel them. We still experience them. So instead of removing them or putting them in a closet or letting them run the show, David communicates them transparently to the Lord. And then he reminds himself of the promises and the truths that God had already given him. He reminds himself of the power of what God has already promised, what God has already said he will do. And I think this, butting up against the fears and anxieties that we have every single day, some rational, some irrational, the things that we struggle around just by being human beings, we could have so much comfort and peace just by reminding ourselves of what is true, reminding ourselves of what God has already promised, what God has said in his word, what God is like. And this is, honestly, like if we focused the majority of our day on these truths, on transparently bringing these things before the Lord, and then communicating and reminding ourselves of what is true, we would probably have far more energy and space and time to serve him in joy and confidence. And I think if we were to remember that, our day would be pretty awesome.